In our 7th year of marriage, Ethan shared 2 live photos on Facebook while on a business trip, captioning them, "I really miss my wife during these few days away." However, after I started the live broadcast, I heard another woman's voice. I commented, "Do you have a second wife?" After this Facebook post was deleted in seconds, Ethan called me and angrily berated me. "You're just a brainless, jealous woman, always filled with suspicion and paranoia. Chloe and I are just focused on work, so stop projecting your dirty thoughts onto us." In the past, I would have cried, thrown a tantrum, and even begged to win Ethan back. But I'm exhausted now. Holding the prenatal checkup report, I turned around and chose to have an abortion. This time, it's me who no longer wants him. I was at the hospital for a prenatal checkup when I saw Ethan's post on Facebook. I am 3 months pregnant. I had originally intended to share this surprise with him after he returned from his business trip, but that was before I opened those 2 live photos. One photo depicts the layout of the hotel windows, while another features a pair of high-end earrings nestled in a velvet box. This is the pair I told him I liked a while back. I was initially very happy until I opened these 2 live photos. The sounds of applause for love and the playful voices of women filled my ears. Suddenly, I felt so disheartened. Gripping the pregnancy check report I had just received, I turned around and went for an abortion. When Ethan got home, I was curled up in bed with abdominal pain. He was originally supposed to return in a couple of days, but maybe he changed his plans and came back early out of guilt. However, I no longer cared. Is it interesting? Just because of your comment, Chloe has been crying and feeling down, and she didn't have the energy to come to work with me, which caused us to lose a major client. Ethan noticed that I was ignoring him and pushed me in frustration. It hurt a lot, and I didn't have the strength to deal with him. I simply replied with a faint "Are you still upset? I've explained this to you countless times. Chloe and I are innocent, and our relationship is simply one of a superior and subordinate. Can you please stop acting like a jealous, brainless woman? Furthermore, Chloe is a career woman who puts work first, unlike you, a housewife, who only focuses on love and romance. It's so noisy." I frowned and pulled the blanket over my head. In the past, I would have definitely broken down in tears, demanding an explanation from Ethan. But this time I was surprisingly calm. Maybe he sensed that something was wrong with me. Ethan's tone suddenly became softer, laced with a hint of panic. "Grace, I know you misunderstood," so I hurried back immediately. "Look, I even got you that pair of earrings you love the most. Whenever Ethan does something to upset me, he buys me expensive gifts to make it up to me. He wraps me and the blanket in his arms, and his cold lips brush against my forehead. The sickening scent of Chloe's distinctive perfume filled my nostrils. I could almost picture the 2 of them together in the hotel before. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I turned away from him. Ethan's patience had worn thin. He stopped trying to sweet-talk me and instead yanked my blanket off. "Grace, am I giving you any respect? I take good care of you, and yet you still give me attitude." However, he quickly became stunned. He noticed a splash of bright red on my pants. "Grace, what happened to you? Why are you bleeding?" Ethan asked, looking anxious. I didn't respond, I just pulled the blanket back over myself. With a worried look, Ethan insisted on taking me to the hospital. He just picked me up in a horizontal position, and the phone in my bag started ringing. "Your sweetheart is calling, so hurry and answer it." This is the special ringtone Ethan set for Chloe. Ethan awkwardly explained, "This is just something Chloe set up for fun, so don't take it seriously." I replied calmly, "Yeah, it's quite nice." Ethan disregarded my unease. He tossed me back onto the bed and turned to answer the phone. I was jolted a few times, and the pain in my lower abdomen intensified. When Ethan came back from the phone call, he was already holding his suit jacket. "Because of your foolishness, Chloe was about to jump off a building to prove her innocence, so I rushed over. You should take a taxi to the hospital for a checkup, and once you feel better, go apologize to Chloe." Right after that, there was a loud sound of the door slamming shut. The bedroom was engulfed in silence. Tears streamed uncontrollably from the corners of my eyes. In the past, Ethan would panic for a long time even if I just had a small cut on my finger. Now, however, he lets me take a taxi to the hospital just to comfort his little girlfriend. I finally managed to fall asleep and ease the pain a bit, but I was soon awakened by the incessant ringing of my phone. It was Jack, Ethan's brother. Jack generally shows me a lot of respect. Whenever he sees me, he greets me with a smile and calls me sister-in-law. I patiently picked up the phone, and the loud music on the other end abruptly fell silent. Sister-in-law. I'm Jack. All of us brothers know that there's a bit of a misunderstanding between you and Ethan. So why not come over to our place for a visit, just to have some fun and unwind? We can chat about Ethan later. I immediately said no, I'm not going. But Jack still thought I was just sulking. All right, sister-in-law, stop sulking. If you don't come in half an hour, we'll come pick you up. Just like that, he sent you the location. Jack hung up the phone and shared the location, which is a KTV they often visit. I know how tough they can be. Plus, I still haven't divorced Ethan, so I can't just leave everything behind. I pushed through the pain, got out of bed, changed my clothes, and took a taxi to the KTV. The moment I opened the door to the private room, I saw Chloe nestled in Ethan's embrace. They were kissing as if no one else existed, while Ethan's friends were cheering them on. It was obvious that my arrival had shattered this moment of bliss. Everyone's eyes were on me. Chloe looked at me with a teasing and provocative expression. A look of shock and panic flashed in Ethan's eyes as he hurriedly pushed Chloe off his lap. He stood up and walked over to me. Grace, it's not what you think, I just lost a game of truth or dare with Chloe. I stepped back to avoid Ethan's attempt to grab my hand. His hand froze in midair. A look of awkwardness crossed his face, quickly replaced by anger. How did you get here? Are you following me? I knew that a woman like you wouldn't trust anyone at all. Fortunately, Jack saved Chloe before I could rush to the office. Otherwise, do you really think you could still see Chloe standing here? I suggest you apologize to Chloe. I tilted my head to look at Jack. He was drunk and no longer pretending. He raised his glass to me. Sorry, sister-in-law, but I've always thought that someone like you, a housewife, doesn't deserve someone like Ethan. How can you even compare to our Chloe? She's capable, beautiful, and understanding. She plays with our brother and Ethan, unlike you, who even gets Ethan to drink. I now understand what Jack meant. He intentionally let me see Ethan and Chloe being close, so I would completely give up on Ethan. I've come to fully grasp the idea that like attracts like and people tend to group together. A flicker of annoyance crossed Ethan's face as he shoved Jack. How do you speak to your sister-in-law like that? Besides, Chloe and I are innocent, we didn't mean anything by it. Ethan did not challenge Jack's assertion that he was unworthy of him. In his heart, how could a woman who had stood by him through thick and thin for many years, with the signs of time etched on her face, ever be worthy of him now that he has achieved success and is surrounded by beautiful women? I pulled out the divorce agreement I printed this afternoon from my bag and tossed it onto the table. Jack is right, you and Chloe are the perfect match. Ethan, let's get a divorce. The room fell into a brief silence. Ethan's breathing quickened, and he looked at me in disbelief. What did you say? I met his gaze and said clearly, let's get a divorce. This was the first time I had ever mentioned divorce. However, Ethan had already brought it up countless times before me. When I went to the office to find him, I accidentally spilled the lunchbox that Chloe had prepared for him, and that was when he mentioned divorce. He went on a trip with Chloe, who posted on Facebook flaunting their relationship. I was so upset that I confronted Ethan, and he also mentioned divorce to me. Even after Chloe provoked me to my face several times, I couldn't hold back and slapped her. Following that, Ethan not only filed for divorce but also pushed me forcefully. His force was too strong, and he pushed me down the stairs. I had a miscarriage. That was my first child with Ethan. It hadn't even developed yet, and it was taken from me by its own biological father. However, at that moment, Ethan felt no guilt whatsoever, Instead, he angrily scolded me for not taking proper care of his child. "You are truly a fool. This is the consequence of your thoughtless words and actions. The sins you've created are being suffered by my child." At that moment, I was so overwhelmed that I didn't even notice the blood streaming from my legs. I crawled to Ethan's feet, knelt down to apologize, and sobbed, promising that I would never upset him again. It was only then that he took me to the hospital. The doctor told me that my body is unique, making it very difficult for me to conceive again. At that moment, Ethan felt a sense of regret and guilt. However, he soon left me to be with Chloe, as she was terrified of thunder. I lay alone in the empty hospital room. Ethan has already forgotten, and I am also very afraid of thunder. In the past, whenever there was thunder, even if he was already asleep, he would instinctively hold me in his arms to comfort me. "Grace isn't afraid, I'm here for her." My thoughts snapped back as I coldly stared at Ethan, now dressed in a suit. Gritting his teeth, he rushed over and grabbed my shoulder. "Say that again? How dare you mention divorce to me?" Chloe suddenly burst into tears and rushed to hug Ethan. "Ethan, I'm always being wronged by my sister-in-law. I really don't want to live anymore. If it comes to that, just let me die. Please don't let an outsider interfere with your marriage to her." Chloe was saying she wanted to die, yet her hands were tightly clutching Ethan's shirt. Surprisingly, Ethan didn't comfort Chloe. Instead, he looked at me with bloodshot eyes and said, "Grace, you really have some nerve to play this game of using divorce as a way to manipulate me." Chloe quickly changed her approach. "Ethan, didn't you say sister-in-law was bleeding? I get it now, she's on her period and feeling down." Ethan's previously furrowed brow instantly relaxed. Chloe's words offered a great explanation for my unusual behavior today. Ethan sighed deeply. He brushed Chloe's hand aside and stepped forward to grab me. It turned out that her period had started, and she was feeling down. No wonder, no wonder. Jack was quietly chatting with a few other guys nearby. "What's the fuss about Aunt Flo? It's really being overly dramatic. I don't see Chloe acting like that. Is it just because Grace is a woman that she behaves this way? Women like her, who stay at home and spend men's money, are just being pretentious. Never mind, let's just say Ethan is out of luck. I don't want to get into too many topics." I simply pointed to the divorce agreement on the table and said, "I suggest you sign it soon. I don't think you want to see my lawyer come to discuss it with you." Ethan picked up the divorce agreement from the table and ripped it to shreds. "I didn't mind, that's okay, you tore it, I can just print another one." Ethan gently coaxed me, "Stop it, Grace. If you're not feeling well, just go lie down. I'll be back to keep you company soon." Seeing Ethan's shameless expression, I realized I needed to find a lawyer. Before I left, I took one last look at the men in the box who were sizing me up with disdain. "You must have forgotten that the empire Ethan has now was built with my help, the so-called housewife you all talk about. My accomplishments back then are something you few, who can only speak with half your body, will never be able to match in this lifetime. After being a lapdog to Ethan for so long, I've really started to see myself as nothing more than that. Especially you, Jack, you play the most extravagantly, and I have the least respect for you. You should probably get a checkup soon, you look like you might have something contagious. I've been fed up with this group of men for a long time. I used to keep quiet out of respect for Ethan, but that's no longer the case." After I finished speaking, I simply walked away, ignoring the angry insults coming from behind me. I had only been back for a short while when Ethan returned, smelling strongly of alcohol. I no longer made hangover soup for him in the living room like I used to, nor did I massage his head. I slept very well after locking the bedroom door, while Ethan seemed to have stayed awake all night. When I saw him in the morning, he was still sitting on the sofa. He was still wearing the suit from last night, with the smell of alcohol still on him. His eyes were slightly swollen, and there were dark circles beneath them. When I came out, I saw Ethan quickly get up and say, "Grace, I bought you breakfast." I glanced at the table, and there was a bowl of seafood porridge. However, I am allergic to seafood porridge, while Chloe loves it the most. I went straight to the kitchen, grabbed some bread and milk, and sat down at the table. I asked him, when can we sign the divorce agreement? Ethan was taken aback for a moment, then irritably kicked a chair, which fell to the ground with a loud thud. I didn't even blink. Who cares about him? I've already bought you breakfast, what else do you want? Are you finished yet? Go outside and see for yourself, whose woman acts like you. Don't think that just because you're on your period, you can walk all over me. In Ethan's eyes, he was being very generous by buying me breakfast, and I should be deeply grateful and just accept it. But what does the breakfast I made for him every day for the past 9 years mean? I said softly, I'm allergic to seafood. The anger in Ethan's eyes suddenly faded, as if all his strength had been drained, and he collapsed onto the sofa. He quickly got up again, picked up the seafood porridge from the table, and threw it in the trash. He explained, I'm sorry, I forgot that Chloe loves the seafood porridge the most, so I thought you would like it too. I didn't even look up. It doesn't matter. Ethan asked me, aren't you angry? I raised my eyebrows and replied, what's there to be angry about? However, you should sign the divorce agreement as soon as possible. After all, you were once a couple, and it wouldn't look good if things escalated. Ethan didn't respond, he simply said he had work at the company and left. In the days that followed, Ethan came home on time. Unlike before, he didn't make excuses about work and stay out. Every day, he brought me fresh flowers and even bought many things I had mentioned several times but thought were too expensive to get. On top of that, he also cooked for me himself. I looked at the dishes on the table that Chloe had bragged about on Facebook countless times. They just seemed so cheap to me. Does Ethan really think I would change my mind for his belated compliments? I've been in touch with a lawyer over the past few days to sort out my divorce from Ethan, and I haven't had the energy to deal with him. Until today, I received a call from my mom. Grace. Your dad and I came to see you. Mom heard from Ethan that you and he had a disagreement? Couples may argue at the head of the bed but reconcile at the foot. After all these years together, what issues can't be resolved? Your parents are concerned about you, knowing that you can't sleep after your fights, and they came over right away. Please do it for your parents' sake and give Ethan a chance to apologize. I've always shared good news and kept the bad to myself. My parents only see how well Ethan treats me, unaware of the things he does behind my back. Sure, but he owes apologies not only to me. There are others who are waiting for his apology as well. I hope Ethan will appreciate this big gift I gave him. In the private room of the restaurant, Ethan is seated in the middle, flanked by my parents on one side and his parents on the other. At that moment, my parents looked uneasy, while Ethan's parents wore proud expressions, looking at me with disdain. It's clear without needing to guess that Ethan had already embellished the story a lot before I got here. He shifted all the blame onto me. Sure enough, as soon as I sat down, my mother-in-law began to speak sharply. Ethan has spoiled you so much that you've lost all your dignity. Do you even look like a proper daughter-in-law? If someone didn't know any better, they might think you married into our family to be our ancestor. My son is doing so well now, it's only natural for him to have some women around him. I've met Chloe, she's a cultured and sensible girl, unlike you, who gives off a bit of a petty vibe. Ethan tugged at his mother's sleeve. My mom can't tolerate others belittling me like that. She slammed the table and said, Mother-in-law, that's not right. Earlier, you said our Grace was having unexplained outbursts and brought up divorce. What kind of Chloe has shown up now? I don't care about your Chloe, Emma, there are no men around my daughter, so why does Ethan have women around him? When my mom spoke up angrily, Ethan quickly defended himself. Mom, it's not what you think. Chloe is my assistant, and just because we are a bit closer, Grace is upset. Seeing Ethan's hypocritical expression, I couldn't help but laugh. Ethan, I've recorded your 2 live streams. Do you want me to show them now? Ethan was momentarily speechless, but he managed to explain, you misunderstood, that was the sound from the television, not what you think it is. I smiled and shook my head, then asked, my mom said you came to apologize to me? Ethan mumbled and nodded. Well, don't just keep apologizing to me. I took out 2 prenatal checkup reports from my bag and placed them on the table. You should apologize to them as well, your 2 children. You are the one who killed them. My mom first picked up the 2 prenatal checkup reports. She covered her mouth tightly, tears streaming down her face. Oh, Grace, why didn't you tell Mom and Dad that you were pregnant twice? Dad was trembling as he adjusted his glasses, trying to read the words on the report. I smiled wryly, it all slipped away. Once, it was because Ethan pushed me down the stairs, resulting in a miscarriage. The other time was after I discovered Ethan was cheating, and I chose to have an abortion. Ethan's forehead was bulging with veins, and with red eyes, he grabbed the report from my mom's hand. This is impossible, it can't be true. When did you get pregnant again? How come I didn't know about it? Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him coldly and said, when it was conceived doesn't matter, you just need to know that it was terminated after I found out about what you and Chloe did to betray me. The grandparents also started to wail. Oh, my 2 grandsons. Grace, you heartless person, how could you have terminated my grandchild? How did Ethan end up marrying someone like you, a bringer of bad luck? Are you trying to ensure our family has no future? My mom couldn't stand it any longer, so she picked up a bowl from the table and smashed it over Ethan's head. Blood began to seep from his forehead. But he seems to be unable to feel any pain, just tightly gripping those 2 reports and continuously murmuring to himself. It's impossible, this can't be, how could this possibly be? My mom was furious, trembling as she pointed at Ethan and gritted her teeth, saying, while our family may not be wealthy, my daughter has been cherished and raised with love by me and her father, and we won't allow your family to treat her so poorly. Do you remember when you asked us to let you marry our daughter? Back then, Ethan was very poor and couldn't scrape together 1,000 yuan. Still, he managed to gather 600 yuan to buy me the coat I liked. He knelt in the snow and bowed to my parents. He said he was committed to me for life and would give me the best of everything. He warned that if Ethan ever let Grace down, he would face dire consequences. My parents, fearing I would be mistreated if I married him, locked me in my room and wouldn't let me go out to find him. Ethan knelt outside all night. He made himself into a snowman, and my parents didn't give in. He comes every day, pleading to see me. I even went on a hunger strike to demand a meeting. Eventually, my parents couldn't bear to watch me grow weaker from not eating, and they finally agreed to let us meet. Ethan did keep his promise in the end. He became a successful businessman and started his own company, providing me with the best. However, his heart had changed. Ethan is no longer the tough person he once was. Now, he kneels on the ground, his face pale, crying and wailing as he desperately wishes to absorb those 2 reports into his very being. My parents firmly pulled me away, saying they wanted to take me home. But I couldn't leave yet, the division of assets with Ethan wasn't complete. I booked my parents into the best hotel so they can enjoy a few more days. Meanwhile, I'm waiting for Ethan to sign the divorce agreement. 3 days later, I met Ethan at the cafe. He looked very worn out. I placed a new divorce agreement in front of him. Stop it, Ethan, you don't love me anymore, do you? Let's end things amicably. I'm not getting a divorce, Grace, I only love you. Please don't be so cruel to me, I can't live without you. I have been with you for 9 years, and you still can't understand my true feelings? My calmness stands in stark contrast to Ethan's madness right now, just like all those times before when he watched me lose my mind with a calm expression. I said, you loved me, but then that love disappeared, didn't it? Ethan shook his head and replied, it hasn't disappeared. I've always loved you, Grace, you have always been the only one in my heart. Ah. I was fiddling with my coffee cup and asked, so what have you done for me? I. Ethan opened his mouth for a long time but couldn't find a word to say. I laughed. He doesn't like me to be in the spotlight because he gets jealous, so I dedicate myself entirely to being a housewife, just to take care of him. For all these years, I've been the one waiting for him to come home every day. I'm the one who cooks, and I'm also the one who does his laundry and cleans the house. Sometimes, the surprise Ethan prepared for me was just something Chloe picked out randomly. He even forgot what I like to eat and what I can't eat. His affection for Chloe is just as strong as what he had for me in the past, and I've always struggled to understand it. How could things change so fast? Ethan, your love is genuine, and so is your betrayal. I can't spend the rest of my life clinging to memories of you from years ago, can I? Ethan remained silent, simply holding my hand and gazing at me with a pitiful look. It was just like every time he had upset me in the past, coming to seek my forgiveness. Back then, I joked that Ethan was like a puppy. Never mind, comparing him to a dog now would be an insult to dogs. Our child is gone, and so is my love for you. Ethan, this time I don't want you anymore. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. I picked up my bag and stood up, remember to sign. As I turned around, I spotted a familiar figure at the entrance of the coffee shop. It was Chloe. Ethan. Ethan. Chloe couldn't stop smiling. She was holding a piece of paper and running in with her dress lifted. Ethan wanted to come after me, but he stopped in his tracks. He managed to smile at Chloe. I ignored the wild mandarin ducks and left right away. However, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of what Chloe was holding. It was a prenatal checkup report. It must have been at least 2 months, I thought. It turns out they had been in close contact for quite some time. It's truly repulsive. I suddenly feel that divorcing Ethan so calmly is really too lenient on him. I want to make him suffer and return the pain he once caused me, but doubled. When Ethan returned in the evening, the earlier look of dejection had vanished from his face. He smiled, causing the corners of his eyes to crinkle. He still carried the scent of Chloe's perfume. At that time, I was sitting at the dining table, eating snail noodles while binge-watching a show. Ethan hated the smell of snail noodles and never let me eat them at home before. Even after I finish eating snail noodles outside and come home, Ethan always complains that I smell bad and insists I take 3 showers and spray perfume to mask the odor before he lets me go to bed. The aroma of snail noodles now fills the entire room. However, Ethan didn't dare to say anything further. Indeed, a man shouldn't be too accommodating. Ethan merely frowned and said nothing more. Instead, he sat across from me with a smile. He rubbed his hands together and said to me in a flattering tone, "Grace, Chloe is pregnant." I smiled faintly without looking up and replied, "Congratulations." Ethan's expression froze for a moment, then he quickly added, "Haven't you always wanted a child? Once the baby in Chloe's womb is born, we can raise it together, and the child will only see you as its mother." I looked up from my meal, staring in disbelief at Ethan. How could someone be so shameless as to ask me to help him raise a child with another woman? Am I really that pathetic? "So, you finally admit that you and Chloe are not innocent?" Ethan paused for a moment, his eyes reddening as he replied, "It's not what you think, Grace. During a business trip, Chloe and I both drank too much and lost track of ourselves, which is why we accidentally ended up in that situation. Chloe is aware that she has wronged you, which is why she took the initiative to offer to raise the child for you. Can you please not misunderstand us? What man doesn't make mistakes? My heart will always belong to you." I looked at him calmly and said, "All right. But I haven't forgiven you for what happened before, I need to see how you behave." Ethan sighed deeply, and the gloom on his face vanished. From that day forward, he would cook for me himself every day. However, it's not just that I find it bland, I also think it's too salty. Every time, I have to ask Ethan to redo it. After he has redone it a few times, I end up spilling the food on the table all over him. Ethan, you really are useless. After trying so many times, you still can't get it right. You're not being sincere with me at all, just like Ethan used to be. Ethan gave the heart-shaped lunches I made for him every day to Chloe. However, Chloe is very picky about my cooking and even gets upset with Ethan, saying the food isn't good. Ethan would call me at this time and yell, "You idiot, you don't even need to work, you just stay at home all day and can't even cook. You're not being sincere with me at all." But I also didn't cook when I was at home before. My parents are hesitant to let me cook, and my mom said, "My precious daughter has such beautiful hands, they are not meant for cooking for others." However, since Ethan has a sensitive stomach and I was worried he might get a stomachache, I kept practicing cooking. Even if I cut my finger or got blisters from the oil splashes, it all feels incredibly ironic in hindsight. After 7 years of marriage, I'd barely had a few meals cooked by Ethan. Yet, he and Chloe have only known each other for a short time, and he often cooks for her, even disregarding my feelings. As I thought about it, I splashed the water from the table onto his face. "Ethan, if you don't genuinely want to cook for me, then just leave." Ethan instinctively raised his hand to shield his face from the water. I noticed a band-aid on his thumb. I was taken aback, and tears filled my eyes. "Ethan, what happened to your hand?" Ethan quickly hid his hands behind his back, his voice hoarse. "It's nothing, Grace, just a minor injury." Tears streamed down my face as I sobbed. "All you know how to do is come and make my heart ache like this." After I finished speaking, I ran back to the bedroom. To Ethan, it would only seem that as long as he was hurt, he could win back my heart. After that, Ethan often had wounds on his body. I continued to speak to him coldly every day, only showing concern when he was hurt. His injuries evolved from initial scrapes and bruises to later knife wounds. However, Ethan's energy is truly remarkable. While he is busy trying to please me, he also manages to take care of the pregnant Chloe. Sometimes, while I was cleaning up the dishes I had broken, Chloe called to say she was feeling unwell, and I needed to take her to the hospital to get checked out, for the sake of our future children. Sometimes, while I was on my way back from buying flowers, Chloe mentioned that there was a snack she really wanted to eat. I figured it must be the baby in her belly craving it, so I decided to buy it for her first before returning. Ethan justified all his actions of caring for Chloe as being for the sake of the baby, as if that could conceal the fact that he was cheating. Every time he returns from being with Chloe, I end up wrecking the house. Then I lean against the door and watch Ethan kneeling on the floor, slowly cleaning up the mess. I can sit still, but Chloe can't seem to sit still anymore. She invited me out. "Grace, is this really interesting? Ethan doesn't love you anymore. Holding on to him like this will only make you look cheap and undesirable." I looked at Chloe in front of me. Her belly hadn't really started to show, yet she was already wearing a loose maternity dress. It seemed like she was worried that people wouldn't realize she was a mistress who had gotten pregnant. I picked up the coffee in front of me and took a sip. "It's not that I don't want to divorce your brother Ethan, it's that he doesn't want to divorce me." "What should I do?" Chloe scoffed. "How could that be? Ethan loves me. He made sure your child was aborted, yet he takes great care of our child. Can't you see that? Grace, you're old now. Do you really think you're still the young and beautiful person you used to be? You'll never surpass me in this lifetime." Without hesitation, I picked up the steaming coffee in front of me and splashed it on her. "Sorry, but you smell really bad, let me help you with that." Chloe screamed and stood up. Her previously fierce expression turned gentle the moment she saw Ethan at the door. "You, how could you splash me? I'm carrying Ethan's child." Ethan approached quickly to see where I had splashed Chloe. Upon hearing this, he looked up with a reproachful expression. "Grace, this is your fault, Chloe is pregnant, how could you possibly hurt her?" I slapped Ethan in the face. "Didn't you say that the child in her womb would be raised by me in the future? If you can't even handle this minor setback, how can you be my child?" Ethan was about to explain, but I slapped him again, leaving him stunned. After grabbing my bag, I quickly walked away. Before long, Chloe's cries came from behind. "Ethan, what do you mean? What do you mean by letting her raise my child? This is my child. Didn't you say you would marry me? How could you treat me like this? I'm pregnant with your child." Right after that, there was a sharp sound of a slap on my face and Chloe's scream. I ignored the chaos behind me and checked my watch. "Hurry up." Ethan's parents rushed over, especially his mother, who stumbled a few steps as she hurried out of the car. Ethan's mother was eager for a grandson, and right now, Chloe was pregnant with a child from the He family. How could she accept that her beloved grandson would be the son of a mistress? Now that divorce agreement, whether Ethan wants to sign it or not, he has to sign it. Sure enough, as soon as Chloe saw Ethan's mother arrive, she rushed into her arms, clutching the prenatal checkup report. "Aunt, I'm pregnant with Ethan's child," but not only did Ethan come to hit me with grace, he even asked me to terminate the pregnancy. I understand that this child comes from a questionable background, but regardless, he is still your grandson. Ethan's mother held Chloe in her arms, looking heartbroken. Ethan's father slapped him across the face and said, "You beast, how dare you treat Chloe this way?" Ethan's mother held Chloe tightly and cried, "If anything happens to Chloe or the baby she's carrying, I won't be able to go on living. You need to divorce Grace. Keeping a hen that can't lay eggs in our family will only bring us shame. After I die, how will I be able to face the ancestors of the family?" Later, under the pressure of his mother's death, Ethan signed the divorce agreement. He looks even more worn out than before, with a few gray hairs at his temples. "Grace, I had no choice, please wait for me. After Chloe has the baby, I will remarry you." I smiled with satisfaction after receiving the divorce agreement. Feeling guilty towards me, Ethan left almost all of his assets to me. With my goal accomplished, I was reluctant to engage with him any further. I stood up and shot a glance at Ethan. "Ethan, what are you thinking? You're already tainted, I don't want you anymore, it's impossible for us in this lifetime." Ethan stared at me in disbelief. His lips quivered as he said, "Grace, haven't you already forgiven me? Please don't say that to me, okay? You shouldn't say that to me, I can't handle it. You can't be so cruel to me." I scoffed, "Are you dreaming? I might be able to forgive you, but what about those 2 dead children? Will they forgive you? Ethan, you are selfish and hypocritical. Who are you really sincere to? Don't pretend for too long, thinking you are some kind of unparalleled romantic." Ethan's tears flowed down his face as he reached out to grab the divorce agreement from my hands. I turned to the side to evade his touch. Then another slap landed on his face. "You're too dirty, don't touch me. Get lost." Ethan knelt on the ground and began to cry. I walked away without looking back. I've spent these years of my youth on Ethan. It's time to take it back for myself. I opened a pet cafe. I love kittens and puppies, but since Ethan doesn't like these furry animals, I haven't had any for many years. Now I can finally enjoy petting cats and dogs. I also opened a cake shop because I really enjoy desserts and love making small cakes myself. This not only satisfies my taste buds but also allows me to showcase my skills more effectively. Ethan and Chloe got married, but they didn't have a wedding ceremony. I don't even need to guess, I know that Ethan claimed it was inconvenient to hold a wedding because Chloe was pregnant. Chloe is determined to become the president's wife, having a marriage certificate is all that matters to her. She doesn't care about the wedding itself. Sometimes, I still come across Chloe's Facebook posts featuring sweet pictures of her and Ethan. Ethan didn't stop trying to contact me. He attempted to message and call me in various ways, but I blocked him every time he reached out. Eventually, he stopped contacting me altogether. However, my cake shop sometimes gets a few large orders from the same address. I don't even need to guess, I know this is Ethan's doing. But that's fine, he wants to hurry up and send the money. So I'll just go along with it. This is what he owes me. I enjoyed a period of happy little days until one day when Ethan came to my cake shop. Grace, Chloe has given birth to a girl." Ethan excitedly showed me the photo on his phone. I looked at him with the eyes of someone who thinks he's foolish. "So you had a child, huh? What, do you expect me to give your kid a red envelope?" Ethan's eyes brimmed with tears of joy. He took my hand and said, "Do you remember, Grace? I told you that once the baby is born, we would get remarried. Look how adorable she is. She really resembles you. I named her Kitty to express my feelings of missing you." I raised an eyebrow and glanced at the photo in his hand, chuckling softly. "Ethan, your daughter doesn't look like you at all. Especially that mole at the corner of her mouth." I feigned deep thought. Doesn't she resemble your good friend Jack? Ethan's smile froze on his face as he began to examine the photo closely. His complexion visibly paled. I watched his panicked figure run away and couldn't help but find it very amusing. I never expected that the offhand guess I made would turn out to be true. After Ethan returned, he conducted a paternity test with Kitty, and the results revealed that there is no parental relationship between them. Kitty is the daughter of Chloe and her good friend Jack. They are worried about Ethan's company. I heard he broke Jack's leg, but I'm not really concerned. I'm worried he might get too involved with me, so after quickly hiring an acting manager, I took my parents on a trip. Ethan sent me numerous messages from a new phone number, and his regret and despair are apparent in every line. He said, "Grace, I now understand why I was drawn to Chloe. It's because she reminds me of you when you were younger. She looked so beautiful in that white dress, with her hair blowing in the wind, that I couldn't forget it. When Chloe came into my life, I couldn't help but be attracted to her. But the truth is, I still love you deep down. You are the only person I have ever truly loved in this life." I took a quick look and kept blocking him. Chloe and I are nothing alike. This is just his excuse for self-deception. I really don't care what happens to him in the future. Our next destination is Changbai Mountain. I'm excited to go see the snow with my parents. Oh, and I have a little dog that I take care of. Our family of 4 is about to start a whole new chapter in our lives.